Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive on something pretty unexpected from Chernobyl. The wolves there, and what they might be able to tell us about cancer resistance. It's really a fascinating story that starts with tragedy, but then takes this turn you might not expect.
Yeah, that's right. It's not very often we associate Chernobyl with anything positive at all, but amongst like all that lasting environmental damage, there's this remarkable story about adaptation and like resilience unfolding in the exclusion zone.
Yeah, let's set the scene for everyone listening. So
Yeah.
April 26, 1986, the whole world is watching in horror. A reactor explodes at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and it just sends radioactive material across Europe. And the result? A 1,000 square mile exclusion zone. Hundreds of thousands of people had to evacuate. And those radiation levels, they're still exceeding safe limits for humans today.
Yeah. Just think about that for a second. 6 times higher than what we even consider safe for us. That's a harsh environment to say the least.
But here's the thing. Despite all of that, wildlife has made this surprising comeback. We're talking deer, elk, boars, even some endangered species, like Przewalski's horses and brown bears. It's basically become Europe's largest wildlife reserve.
Yeah, it's like nature is doing its own experiment there, almost like adapting to these crazy conditions, and that's where the story of the wolves gets really, really interesting.
Right. So there's this evolutionary biologist
Hmm?
from Princeton University, Dr. Carol Love. She's been studying the gray wolves at Chernobyl since 2014, and she's using some pretty amazing technology, like
Mm.
radio collars, to track their movement. But not just that, they also measure their radiation exposure in real time.
Yeah, that's a key point here because now by measuring their actual exposure, researchers can correlate that data with all these other findings, genetic variations and changes in gene expression.
Oh, they're taking blood samples too, right? More
Oh,
like genetic analysis.
yeah.
And what they found is that these wolves, they aren't just surviving. They're showing signs of adapting to this chronic radiation exposure in ways that kind of resemble what we see in cancer patients who are undergoing radiation therapy.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder how are they doing this? Dr. Love's research has uncovered some early clues though. For example, they're finding evidence in the wolves' DNA that suggests they may have enhanced DNA repair mechanisms. You see, when radiation damages DNA and those breaks aren't repaired properly, that can lead to mutations and then potentially cancer. So it looks like the wolves might have evolved a way to like more effectively repair this damage.
That's incredible. Like their bodies have developed some sort of shield against the effects of radiation.
Precisely. And it's not just the DNA repair either. Dr. Love is also investigating changes in their immune systems, specifically something called anti-tumor immunity. So think of it this way. Your immune system is always on patrol, identifying and eliminating threats, including those potentially cancerous cells.
So are you saying that the wolves' immune systems might be getting better at recognizing and destroying cancer cells?
That's one of the leading hypotheses for sure. It's possible that over generations, the radiation has selected for wolves with stronger immune systems, ones that are better at fighting off cancer. Of course, it's still pretty early in this research, but the findings so far, they're really intriguing.
This is where it gets exciting for me. We're talking about wolves who've been exposed to radiation for 8 or 9 generations now,
Yeah,
ever since the disaster. That's a long time for natural selection to do its thing.
exactly. And what we're seeing in these wolves might just be a glimpse into the power of evolution to help a species adapt, even in the most challenging environments. And think about what this could mean. Like, if we can figure out how these wolves are adapting, could it help us, with developing new cancer treatments for people?
Now you're talking. Imagine harnessing the power of nature, the same force that shaped how these wolves adapted to fight cancer in humans. That's a pretty captivating thought.
It is. It is. But we have to be cautious too. We're still early on in understanding these adaptations. It's a complex puzzle.
Of course, of course. It's not as simple as just like copying what the wolves do and applying it to us. But where do you see this research going?
Well, one thing that looks promising is identifying the specific genes and the changes in how they're expressed that are actually causing these adaptations. Once we know those mechanisms better, then we can start exploring, ways to maybe mimic or enhance those same processes in humans.
So it's about understanding how these adaptations work, not just what they are.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that animal studies, they don't always translate directly to humans. We're different, our physiology, our immune systems, how we respond to treatments.
Right, that makes sense. But even if it doesn't lead to like a direct cure, could studying these wolves help us understand cancer better in new ways?
Absolutely. Cancer is complex, and any new knowledge we get, any new perspective, brings us closer to figuring it out. These wolves are basically a natural experiment in cancer resistance. By studying them, we're getting insights into the very mechanisms that might be the key to better treatments, or even prevention.
Wow, it's like they're speaking the secret language of survival and we're just starting to understand it. But there's a problem, right? The research has hit some roadblocks.
Yeah, unfortunately. The whole geopolitical situation, on top of the COVID-19 pandemic we had, it's put Dr. Love's fieldwork in Chernobyl on hold for now.
Oh man, that's such a shame. So much potential just waiting. But I imagine they're still analyzing all the data they already have.
Oh, absolutely. They've got tons of information from all the years of research they've already done. It takes time to analyze it all and come to some real conclusions. It's meticulous work. And who knows what other surprises are hiding in that data, just waiting to be discovered.
It really makes you wonder what other secrets these resilient wolves might be holding, just waiting for us to find them. This whole story really changes how we think about Chernobyl, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's a harsh reminder of how destructive nuclear accidents are. But it also shows us how incredible nature is. Even facing this kind of devastation, life finds a way, not just to survive, but to adapt and thrive.
And that brings us back to you, listening right now. Why should you care about this? Well, think of it this way. Chernobyl is like a mini version of the environmental problems we're dealing with globally. Climate change, pollution, habitat loss, all of it. They're forcing species to adapt, to change. And the wolves of Chernobyl are showing us that adaptation is possible, even in the most extreme situations. Makes you wonder what we could learn from other species facing these same kind of problems. Maybe there's a whole bunch of survival strategies out there just waiting for us.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought. And maybe by studying how they adapt, we can not only learn to protect, like biodiversity, but also find solutions to some of our own problems, like the big ones.
Okay, so let's go back to these wolves for a minute. They aren't just surviving at Chernobyl. It's possible they're actually thriving. And they seem to be evolving, like more and more resistance to cancer. They've been doing this for generations. And now scientists are studying them, hoping to, learn from how they've adapted.
Exactly. The Chernobyl wolves are like living proof of how powerful natural selection is and the potential for discovering things that could help human health. It's a unique look into how genes, environmental pressures, and evolution all work together.
So what should our listeners take away from all this today?
I think the Chernobyl wolves offer this message of resilience and hope. They show us that even when things seem impossible, life finds a way, not just to survive, but to adapt, to
Yeah.
flourish. And maybe, just maybe, by studying them, we can find solutions to some of our own challenges, like the fight against cancer.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And it sparks a sense of wonder about what else is hidden in nature. It shows how connected all living things are, and how important it is to understand and protect all the different kinds of life on this planet.
We'll leave you with this question. Could studying these wolves help us understand and maybe even beat cancer in humans? Could we actually use the power of natural selection to our advantage?
It's a question worth thinking about. And who knows, maybe someday the answer will come from Chernobyl itself, a place where tragedy and hope come together in a way you just wouldn't expect. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of the Chernobyl wolves. Until next time, keep exploring.